Thank you for being on today's call. Let me share my screen. Today is going to be a little bit different. This is emergency preparedness support for home care and hospice, and today's going to be a little different in that we're going to have um, the first part. I need to talk to folks, especially folks in the Region 1 area of the state, because we have a unique situation that's happening here, and we're going to need home health and hospices in Region 1 to actually participate in helping us get through this next emergency that has been declared. And then following that, Ms. Patricia White is with us from Region 6, and she's going to give us an in-service on the mega shelter in Louisiana. So we'll get underway. Welcome today. Um, in the because of the drought situation, not just in Louisiana, but throughout the entire country, all of the rivers that contribute to the Mississippi River are now experiencing drought. And as a result of that, their water levels are low. And as a result of that, I don't know, those of you who live near the Mississippi, have you been near the river recently? But it's at historic lows. And because the Mississippi is so low, salt water from the Gulf of Mexico is now moving up the river. Now that doesn't sound like that's a big deal, but it really is a big deal because salt water, like first of all, you can't drink salt water, and most of us along the river take water from the river in terms of using it for the drinking water. But the second thing is that it can salt water can really corrode all of our appliances, our pipes, our iron pipes, the galvanized pipes. So it's going to be it's going to be a potential big mess. And at some point, we may not have potable drinking water available from the tap by the latter part of October. And so this is the salt water edge. Salt water is much denser than fresh water. And so it's traveling underneath the fresh water at the top. And they talk about two sections. The one is the toe, which is the first part of the saltwater wedge that's moving along the Mississippi River bottom. And then about 10 to 12, 15 miles behind that, the water, even at the top of the river, is going to be filled with salt water. And after it gets to 250 parts per million, it's undrinkable. It's unusable by humans and by pets. And it's also important to remember animals are included in all of these updates that the state is now doing. What the Army Corps of Engineers have done brilliantly is that they built this wedge at the bottom of the river, and about 3 weeks ago, salt water overtopped that. And so this past Monday, they began heightening that to an elevation of about 50 feet to try and slow the salt water from progressing further inward towards where drinking water intake valves are all low. That is not going to stop the salt water, but they do believe that it will give us an additional 10 to 15 days before the salt water actually reaches the first of the water intakes. And so this is what the river looks like, and you can see the barrier has been constructed right here, and that's where but the saltwater intrusion is continuing up, and the first place that's really going to be impacted with a population is going to be up here in Belle Chase, and they're expecting. The Army Corps has plotted all of this out, and so this is the timeline. Sorry, this is the timeline that we're seeing and these dates represent when the toe of the saltwater intrusion will reach those water intakes along the river. Contributing to all of this is that weather forecasters do not see a whole lot of relief up in the drought areas of the Missouri, Yellowstone, Ohio valleys. They're experiencing their own droughts, and as well as we're experiencing down here. And so they don't see a whole lot of relief in terms of water that can flush the salt water out. And that the projection right now is that they don't see a whole lot of relief through the end of this year, through January. Long range forecasts are not calling for a whole lot of rain between now and January, which means that we're going to have issues with drinking water not being not being not being able to be processed. And the state and the engineers are still trying to figure out solutions to this, and they're planning for all sorts of scenarios of bringing in fresh water on barges to try and help with the dilution of the salt water before it goes into the intake. They're raising the pipes that actually suck the water out of the Mississippi. They're raising it up so that they're getting only the fresh water at the top, but we don't know how long that's going to last. This is sort of an unprecedented emergency. The governor has declared an emergency. They're looking for a federal declaration, emergency declaration, to sort of help with all of this. And so we are trying to plan ahead. And one of the things that we are planning for is to try and identify how many of our patients are homebound and would need, there are going to be right now the plan is to set up water distribution sites in all of the 4 parishes as they come on or as the water is no longer usable from the river. And we'll open up 3 to 6 different sites where people can come and get up to 2, I think they're saying 2 cases a day per family, per household. And that includes water for pets. The question is, we have a lot of homebound patients in this region, patients that are being on hospice and home health who are not able to get out there and pick up the water. And so we are going to ask hospices and home health agencies. After today's call, I'm going to send you a link to a survey where we're asking you to start giving us some numbers as to how many of your patients would be considered homebound and unable to go and get water from the distribution site in their parish. How many patients are you currently seeing right now that fit into that category? And how many of your staff members or your volunteers might be available to deliver water to them at least on a weekly basis? So there we've devised a little mechanism to capture that sort of information. Also preferences for where the water should be delivered, or whether you want to pick up the water from a secure location that's not open to the public, but it would be designated for providers such as yourself to pick up, who are going to be delivering it. Or do you want it delivered to your office, or and then who the contact person is going to be for your agency with this project? So you will be seeing that right after today's call. For those of you who are in Region 1, there are about 65 providers in that region that service that area, and we're asking for your cooperation in identifying who these homebound. We don't need names, we just need numbers in terms of how many patients on your service are homebound, how many would need water delivered to them, and if your agency's available to participate in the distribution of that water. All of this information can now be found on the front page of our website if you want to look at the governor's declaration or uh, this timeline map. These are the folks in Jefferson, Orleans that are for Region 1 who are coordinating all of these efforts. If you want to get in touch with any of them, or you can certainly contact me. This brings me to the next part. We've been talking about these parish emergency alerts systems. This is a prime example of how emergency managers would be able to communicate directly with patients if they have these alert systems on their cell phones. A lot of your patients may not know how to download or to install those alert systems. Um, if you can help them out in any sort of way, and I mean nurses, social workers, chaplains, even if you have volunteers who can go out and help people, this would be a great time to use some of your student volunteers to go out there and help patients install these alert systems, especially in Region 1, so that emergency managers can send them those alerts as the situation sort of deteriorates over the coming 6 weeks or so. Again, this is the timeline. It's important to remember we're not running out of water. There's lots of water. It's just the tap water in Region 1, in those 4 parishes that's being threatened right now. And it's going to happen with Plaquemines Parish first, and then 10 days later, it will hit Belchase, the St. Bernard Parish, and then it's going to hit the West Bank of Orleans and West Bank of Jefferson. Then it will hit the East Bank of Orleans and the East Bank of Jefferson, those water intakes. So this is the timeline. This is the projections, and those alerts will keep people informed as to where the tow is and where the water intake valves are really being where the water intake is just going to become it's not going to be consumable by humans or by pets. With regards to livestock, the Department of Agriculture is in touch with folks who have livestock to be delivering water to them during this time, is my understanding. And all of this is still brand new. This all came up within the past 3 or 4 weeks that they've been noticing this phenomena happening. It's not the first time it's happened. It happened, I understand, several years ago. It just hasn't gotten this far. And we don't know how long it's going to last. But drinking water advisories will be issued once it reaches 250 parts per million. You can bathe with it, but you can't drink it. You can't cook with it. But the real big problem is that the salt water, when it gets into plumbing systems, iron and lead and all sorts of chemicals, elements, lead, copper, can leach into the system, making the entire system unusable. So that's why we're looking at all sorts of alternatives for all sorts of plans for the coming 3 months. And we would like hospice and home health agencies to be part of the solution here, if at all possible, with regards to delivery of fresh water to your patients. Having said that, we're still in the midst of hurricane season. We still have obligations around emergency management. And if you have not, you may want to start looking at saltwater intrusion as a new hazard that we had never even thought of in terms of our emergency plans. So you will start building a plan around for those of us, at least those of us in Region 1, your plan now needs to start including saltwater intrusion, because this is becoming more and more of a phenomena as we go through these drought years. So um, we will be writing this plan together over the coming 3 months, but uh, this will be an addendum, or this will be an update on your plan, and so you will have to resubmit your plan to the emergency manager next year with saltwater intrusion as a new, wildfire. We have wildfires that are also being included. So we have a lot of emergency plans being updated right now, as a matter of fact. And you need to make sure that your emergency managers are getting those plans. Are you using the at-risk registry? The registry helps us identify those patients that don't have transportation. Those are patients that we're also identifying as probably going to need water delivered to them. We don't know. We don't know if they're actually homebound or they will have caregivers who can. So we need your help in identifying those homebound patients in Region 1. We send out a reminder every Thursday to update the system. If you are having difficulty updating the system or don't know how to do the update, there is a tutorial that is a video tutorial of last month's session where we went through the at-risk registry. I would suggest you click on the video tutorial. It's posted on our website. It's also posted in the email reminder that we send out every Thursday morning, reminding users to update your system. There's also a link there, so you can have folks that are assuming these new responsibilities of updating the at-risk registry. They can certainly just click on and watch along. It's about 37-minute tutorial. You also need to know whether or not your agency, what the parish or the county, do they have any placard system for re-entry into the area after a disaster? Only your emergency managers can tell you if that there is a requirement for those placards. Some places have them, some others don't. And transferring patients, do you have agreements with other providers in other parts of the state to handle your patients if they're going to be moving to that area of the state in the event of some sort of mass evacuation from one part of the state to another? Your planning should always include disasters on weekends and holidays, especially because it seems as though that is baked into this cake here in the Gulf Coast region. And what lessons have you learned from previous disasters? I always remind folks that the future will always resemble the past. It won't be exactly like the past because we're constantly trying to improve on processes. But what you have learned about past disasters can guide you toward the future. Make sure that you know who your contact information for your staff and all of your patients. Know where your staff and your patients are planning to evacuate if there's an evacuation order. And do you have plans to communicate with staff and patients, alternative means of communicating with them if cell phones and landlines go down? There are lots of apps out there that now all you need is a Wi-Fi signal, and you can actually communicate with folks across the world through these. Facebook is an example of a communication device, but you have to make sure that everyone in your staff, all of your patients, all of your staff are aware of what system you're using. Right now in the registry, as of this morning, there were 103 hospice agencies that had over 1,700 patients in the registry. Over 1,000 of those patients would need assistance in the event of an evacuation order. 91 home health agencies currently have over 1,000 patients in there. 780 of which they're saying would need assistance. There's still 100 patients in the registry missing either the county or the parish, and 186 patients in the registry where we're missing their zip codes. And the zip codes are really important because they help us geosync where those patients are actually located in a parish. This is my weekly naughty list. These are the hospices that have patients in the registry, but last Friday they did not update them, and those patients have not been updated as of this morning. So these are the hospices in Louisiana that are on the naughty list this week. If you see your name or you see the name of one of your branches, please ask them to get in touch with me so we can figure out what happened and why they're on the naughty list this week. If they don't know why, the meaning that they didn't update patients last Friday. This is the list of Mississippi providers who did not update patients last week. They have patients, but they have patients in their system. When you don't update the patient, that means the patient's name was not sent to the emergency manager last Friday. And then this is the list of Louisiana home health providers that did not update patients last week. And as of this morning, still had not updated any of these patients. Again, if you see your name or one of your branch agencies, please contact them and have them contact me so that we can figure out why they keep appearing on the naughty list. This is the copy of the notice we send out every Thursday morning. It's ready to go. We have added a new link to this email message that will send you directly to the tutorial or video tutorial. And for emergency managers, regional emergency managers, if you're not yet receiving the regional view of patients, please let me know, and we will start sending you every Friday, not just a parish list, but a regional list of the parishes within each region. That's as far as I'm going to go with regards to saltwater intrusion and hurricane season this year. Today, we also have Miss Patty White, who is in Region 6, and Miss White is the regional coordinator for this thing we call the mega shelter that's located up in Rapides Parish. Miss White, thank you. And I'm going to let you have permission to share your screen. And she's going to teach us a little bit about what's involved in housing masses in this shelter that can hold about 2,000 people up in the Alexandria in central Louisiana, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you, Miss White, for being on today and giving us some insights as to what's involved.
well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I hope this is informational to everyone. And please just stop me at any time if you have a question. I'll be real honest with you, Jamie. If they put anything into the chat box, if you could just stop me and let me answer the questions, because sometimes I get focused on one area and I'm not looking at the whole big picture. So, but like Jamie said, I'm Patty White. I'm the emergency response coordinator for the Office of Public Health here in Region 6, which is the Alexandria area. We're middle of the state. And so we have the state emergency shelter. You may hear it called the mega shelter, the big shelter. It's huge. It's over 220,000 square foot. And so within that, we have two shelters. We have our critical transportation needs shelter. So that is for individuals that do not have a way to evacuate. They're picked up from parish pickup points, put on buses, and they come to us that way. Then we also have our medical needs shelter, which is on the south end of the building. And so with that, with the medical needs shelter, we accept individuals that are drive-ups. They may come by bus, they may come by paratransit, special vans, and also too by ambulance. So when you hear state emergency shelter, mega shelter, that's us, here in Region 6. So this is just a little bit of information to help agencies with planning and preparation to get your clients ready and also your staff ready to evacuate if the situation arises. So we'll just start going through it. I hope that I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, sorry, Jamie.
No problem. The technology doesn't always cooperate with us, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I'm very deprived technology wise. Now, if you ask my grandkids, man, they can hook me up with any and
Yeah,
everything, like you were
exactly.
talking about the different messaging services. I said, oh, wait a minute, I know that one.
Yeah.
My granddaughter taught me about that one. So, okay, I think I'm ready now. Okay, there we go. So if you look at the state of Louisiana, we're divided into 9 regions. And so you have region 1, region 3, 4, 5, and 9. So our evacuating regions are those regions 1, 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes 9 will evacuate to us. Most of the time it's the 4 regions at the south end of the state. With that being said, and Jamie and I were talking about this earlier, if you look at regions 1 and 3, y'all will go through Baton Rouge first before y'all even come into region 6, 7, or 8. Now, 6, 7, and 8, we consider our sheltering regions. So that's where we have the big shelters. We're going to take y'all in, take care of your clients, take care of your citizens from those parishes. So 1 and 3 will go through 2. Okay. And the reason for this being is that in region 2, there's an area on LSU grounds called the bus triage. And region 2 also has a shelter. Whenever we go into an evacuation situation, region 2 and 6 will set up their shelters first. And then we'll start housing till we fill up, and then 7 and 8 will open up their shelters. Okay. So with that being said, the clients and residents from 1 and 3 will go through 2. They're triaged. So just like you do in any situation, you're going to take off the most critical first. Okay. The ones that will not make that trip to region 6, 7, or 8 because we're a little bit further from y'all. And you have to take into consideration too, when somebody goes by private vehicle or goes by coach bus, that length of time for travel, where usually it takes 3 or 4 hours to get to central Louisiana, you're going to multiply that by 2, maybe even 3 times. So it could take them anywhere from 8 to 12 hours to get to region 6. So that's why we like for those clients to go through region 2, be triaged, take off the most critical, the ones that are not going to make that long trip, and then the rest will come to us in region 6. When we had a full coastal evacuation, region 6 became a triage area as well, because what we had to do was start taking off the more critical and start sending folks to 7 and 8 because we were filling up so quickly. Okay. So just depending on the evacuation situation, depending on where the storm's going to hit, is how this evacuation sequence rolls out. If it's a southwest evacuation, like if it's coming in towards Cameron, Calcasieu, then we're not sending anybody through Region 2. They're going to go from 5 directly up to 6. Okay, so that may make a little bit more sense of how this triage process works. Region 4, they're going to come straight up. So they're not going to go through Region 2. It's going to be the New Orleans area, Terrebonne, Lafourche, those areas that will come up through 2. Okay, so when we talk about emergency response, we talk about preparedness, we talk about evacuation, we're going to talk about our shelters, our medical special needs shelters, but we're also going to talk about the other types of shelters that are there as well, how to prepare for pets, how to shelter pets, okay, and also to staff preparedness. So always, 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 preparedness is a personal responsibility. Never depend on the state, the federal government to do your preparedness for you. This is something that begins at home. It begins with those clients in the home. When that hospice nurse makes that first visit, or the home health nurse makes that first visit, y'all need to be talking to them about how to be prepared. And this could be for a no notice event, a tornado. We've seen flooding, we have seen wildfires. I've been working this job since 2002, and I promise you, every plan that I have ever developed seems like we have used it within the last 5 years. I mean, we've gone from hurricanes to pandemics, back to hurricanes, now we're in wildfires, now we're in saltwater intrusion. So the need to be prepared personally is greater than ever. So that begins with having those supplies at home, being ready for a no notice event, getting people to watch the news, listen to the news, learn what's going on in and around their area. You'll be surprised, so many people are tuned out of watching events because they don't want to hear the bad news. Well, I can understand that, but just turn on the local news. Just get them into the habit of watching that or reading about the local news on their phones or computers, whatever, so that they're aware of what's going on. Getting a game plan. They can go to www.getagameplan.org and learn how to prepare. That they need 2 weeks of food, 2 weeks of water, 2 weeks of medication, 2 weeks of pet supplies if they have that. When I give talks, I even encourage greater than 2 weeks because you don't know what the situation may entail. And if you've got the room, if you don't have, try to make the space to have those personal care supplies and food and things like that. The plan is where, how to get there, pets, communication plan. The supply kit, keeping those important papers, those medical orders. Here it says a 7-day supply of medication. I try to encourage a 14-day supply of medication. And then other medical, non-medical supplies that they may need for wound care. And then again, too, to stay informed. Stay informed through, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, if they're not a TV person, watching the local news, watching the Weather Channel, see what's going on locally. Okay, for your at-risk clients, and then we're talking about ones that are oxygen dependent, ventilator dependent, your homebound, your bedbound patients. Be sure that they're registered with their local Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. This is what Jamie does by sending out this at-risk registry is such a great thing for us in emergency planning. We know who to look for coming to us. I can go to this registry and see who is in my region that may be in the need of a shelter, because even though we're in the middle of the state, we have become impacted with certain things, like we've had wildfires, where we had evacuations. We had Hurricane Laura, which impacted us greatly. We lost electricity. We had to set up oxygen distribution sites. So this is really important to have this and to be prepared with this by this registration. For your at-risk clients, get them to call the local power company and be put on that immediate list, I call it. Where if when they're turning the electricity back on to places, they're some of the top people that are going to be turned on because of their medical needs, because they have an oxygen concentrator at home, or they have a ventilator. Most importantly, they need that air conditioning system. Individuals that are at risk need air conditioning. People complain about in the shelter that they're cold, and I'm like, do not touch it, because I'm not having my patients go into respiratory distress because they get too hot. You can put on a jacket, they can't. So this is what you're dealing with. And again, work with your physicians and your home health and your hospices for emergency planning. One good thing, when our patients are hospice patients or they're home health patients that come to us in the shelter, and they tell us which home health agency they're with or what hospice, we know that we can call their sister agency if they have one here locally, and they will send out help to us. During Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Ida, we had many individuals who were hospice patients. And that was a comfort to the family and to our staff as well, from somebody to come out from that hospice to kind of guide us along in that path for that person. I mean, it was very beneficial for all of us, and most especially for the patient and for the family. Because, a lot of times our nurses are not comfortable with death or dying, but having that individual from that hospice agency say, hey, it's okay, this is what we're going to do, this is our game plan. And, so that was truly beneficial for us. And also too, for your at-risk clients, if they're going to evacuate, get them to leave early, please. Don't let them wait around till the storm is, 5 hours in the Gulf, from landfall. Because the longer they wait, the longer that line is on the interstates, getting help out there to them if they need to evacuate by ambulance. It's just, like I said, we've heard the stories of patients being in cars for 16, 18 hours on I-49 or I-10 or I-12 because they waited too late to evacuate. And so they were stuck in traffic. We've had people pull up to our shelters. We've had to immediately turn around and put them into an ambulance and send them Baton Rouge. So again, if they're going to evacuate, get them to leave early. Okay. For your clients, share that agency plan with the clients. Let them know what you're going to be doing. If the agency has to evacuate, their staff has to evacuate. Sometimes the clients are going to take it more seriously if your agency says, hey, look, this is too bad, we're getting our staff out. So let your clients know what's going to be going on. If your staff be going on. Because that's very comforting to them. Also, to let them know when you come back into the parish, okay? Because again, the clients that are in our shelter, they worry about a lot of things. And with good reason, they're worried about their homes, they're worried about services being turned back on. They're worried about, resuming their service agency. Okay. Give them an emergency contact number. Okay. And with this emergency contact number, have them write it down somewhere. Encourage your clients to keep a notebook. Better yet, that folder that y'all give to them. Encourage them to bring that anytime because that has vital information for us as well in the shelter. We can look through that and get the information that we may need. Okay. But as well, get clients to write down numbers, because if they lose that phone or they can't recharge that phone, a lot of times, our brains are in these phones now. If you ask me to recite one of my daughter's phone numbers, I couldn't tell you. I can tell you it begins with a 337. Now, another daughter, I can tell you her number, but what if I can't get a hold of her? We need those other numbers. And we've gotten so, and we saw this the last time that we had a shelter. We had so many individuals, their phones were dead, dying, they had lost them. And they're like, I can't remember that number. I can't remember my daughter's number. So again, writing down numbers, keeping a notebook or keeping that file folder that they have with all their hospice or home health agency information is very beneficial. And then, like we talked about, if the client evacuates, what's the agency's plans for continuing or resuming services with us here? Okay. During the evacuation, triage numbers are going to go out. There'll be a 1-800 number, and there'll be one for each of the regions. So our number gets activated about 48 hours before our shelter opens so that we kind of have an idea. The southern parishes, they may open up quicker so that clients or home health agencies can start calling those numbers to see what shelters are going to be open, where their clients can go to. Transportation. If your client needs assistance, this has to be coordinated through your parish office of Homeland Security. Please don't call me here in Alexandria and you're down in New Orleans and you need transportation. I can't help you. I just can't. That has to go through the Office of Homeland Security down there. And so if you're registered on the at-risk registry service, they have that information. They know who needs an ambulance. You're going to be pushed to the top of the list. Okay. So, that's the importance of getting all of that registered so that you can get that ambulance when needed, when you can get that specialty van. Okay. Also, to know where your collection pickup points are. So you may hear them called PPPs. That's your parish pickup points. It's going to be a centralized location within a city, such as New Orleans or in Region 3, where individuals can go, get onto a bus, and then be sent to a shelter. Okay. So shelters, we have general shelters. These are parish community shelters. Each of the parishes now are mandated to have a parish shelter. So this is like for no notice events. If you have a tornado that rips through your area, then your OEP will set up a shelter, or the neighboring parish may set up a shelter for that parish. Okay. So, that's usually announced at the time of the disaster. During evacuations, we'll have Red Cross shelters that are set up, faith-based shelters, and then of course our state-run critical transportation needs shelters. Medical special needs shelters are also too opened at the time of the event. So, I'm sorry you can't call me the week before that we know something's coming in and saying, hey, I want to reserve 10 spots for patients. I can't do it because I don't know if I'm going to be open. Also, too, that a lot of that is coordinated through your OEPs, through the emergency response coordinators that I work with in the other parishes. Those individuals will call me and say, Patty, I know you're open. I need 10 beds for 10 bariatric people. And I can tell them, yes, I have that. No, I don't have it, but I can get the beds, so the medically needy sheltered. Okay. And then also too, you may have some individuals that are just a hospital shelter and admin. Now, if the parish is evacuating, then more than likely your hospital is not going to take on any additional, but I may can shelter them here in my area, or 7 or 8 can shelter them in the hospitals. And we work with our HRSA coordinators in our hospitals on these individuals to make sure that we get them the care that they need. Okay. This is just kind of an example of a shelter. This is not our shelter. Not our shelter. I don't have any pictures of situations that you see. 38 hospital beds. Those are given to individuals that meet the need of a hospital bed. So that's like your bed bound, your your contract, your bariatric patients of 350 pounds or more, okay? For larger bariatric patients, we get the larger beds, but we have to get those on contract. So it may take me a little bit of time to get those beds in. So, but you can see it's just pretty much a standard cot. We have what we call West cots where the head can tilt up and the feet can tilt up. So it is a little bit more comfortable than the standard, what we call army cots, okay? A standard army cot is about 3 feet by 6 feet. A West cot is probably about 6 feet wide and 6 feet long, okay? So it gives them a little bit extra comfort. This is generally what a shelter looks like. You know, the beds are close together. We have sections where we have mobility. We have cardiac patients. We have respiratory patients, and just kind of a general mix of medical needs. Okay, so there's no private areas. You know, they need to come with a caregiver. So if you have a family that has a patient that needs a medical needs shelter, you need to let them know that somebody needs to come with that individual, okay? Um, we've had families come and want to drop off a patient while they go to the beach in Florida. That's a big no-no. No. Somebody has to stay with that patient. We do understand that there are circumstances where you may have a patient that just absolutely has nobody to come with them. We're not going to refuse them. We will take that individual in. Any of the medical needs shelters will, okay? But if they do have a caregiver, we like for a caregiver to come with them, okay? We also understand too that you may have a elderly person who has a spouse that is elderly as well. We will take both of them. But keep in mind, a lot of times that elderly caregiver becomes a patient as well. So, but we take care of them, and, you know, we're going to take both of them. Pets, there's no pets in the shelter. It has to be a service animal, okay? And it has to be defined as a service animal. We like to see the paperwork with that service animal, because then we know that, you know, it is truly a service animal. We also understand too that there's pets out there that are for anxiety, emotional support, those type of things. We have a pet shelter, and that pet can come with that person on the bus in a soft carrier. They can come to the shelter, but they need to understand that that emotional support animal is going to have to go to the pet shelter. They can get up and go see that animal. They can go feed them. They encourage them to do that. They're not kept prisoner here in the shelter. They're allowed to get up, walk around, go on the convenience run, those type of things. But in the shelter, it needs to be a true identified service animal. Okay. We provide shelter for clients who require medical assistance with daily activities. They're unable to care for themselves and need the assistance of a caregiver, but their conditions are not severe enough for a hospital or an admin. The home health patients that are going home now from the hospitals, you know, are seriously ill. You know, that's cardiac, it's respiratory, it's wound care, sometimes it's daily IV antibiotics. So, you know, we triage them, provide the best tools, may be medically stable and their own home health and not meet the needs of the medical needs shelter. So we can put them into the critical transportation needs side, and they can be sheltered over there and allowing us to keep a bed. Okay. So a second triage does go on at the shelter. Items to bring to the medical special needs, anything that they need at home, they need to bring to the shelter with them. We do keep certain supplies there. we're not gonna have everything, but we'll get them the items that they need to help them while they're there at the shelter. But if they have concentrators, nebulizers, glucose machines, wheelchairs, medications in their original bottles, very helpful. Diapers, if they are on feeding tubes, feeding equipment, feeding pumps are a big thing. Please encourage them to bring that feeding pump with them, okay? I can find them a pole to put it on, but I need that feeding pump machine along with the equipment because those are very hard to get. Hearing aid batteries, glasses, their hearing aids, their CPAP. If they're on any type of special diet, if they can bring their foods with them, great. If they can't, then that's okay. We'll make do the best we can. Insurance card, list of their medications, a list of their doctors. Dialysis is really important. We need that dialysis folder, okay? Because we arrange their dialysis up here. And so that's easy enough for us to just have the patient bring it with them to dialysis up here. DNRs, any of their legal documents, DNRs, medical power of attorneys, because we've had those situations before where we've had a family that was estranged from a loved one, tried to get a hold of the loved one in the shelter. We had to go through the power of attorney. It was a big mess. So we need those documents. So encourage the patient, the caregiver to bring those documents with them, the DNR. And like I said, a written list of their phone numbers, of their family members, of their friends, of their neighbors. Anything like that is extremely helpful. Get them to label all their items. For their service animals, they need to bring their kennel. If it's a large service animal, they're not going to be able to fit that onto a bus. So, but they're not going to refuse that animal off the bus because it is a true service animal. Okay, include the pets in their plan. Like we said, the food kennel, collar with the tag, paperwork, rabies vaccinations, and then also to understand that, help them to understand that, yes, they can bring their pets with them, but the pets are probably not going to stay in the shelter if it's not a service animal, but it'll stay in a shelter right next to our shelter where they can go see and feed them. For your staff preparedness, pretty much everything I talked to y'all about with clients is what your staff needs to do as well. You know, they need to have those personal family supply kits. You know, they need to know their roles and responsibilities during a disaster, how to contact their supervisor, what's their plan for re-entry back into the parish. Do they have that what you want to call it, the letter allowing them re-entry back into the parish? Is a good thing to say. So, you know, what are they going to do with their family, their children, their pets, their property, you know? So those are the things that y'all need to work out with your staff. Okay. So here's some websites, get a game plan, www.ready.gov, Red Cross, all good websites for emergency planning, how to make a plan, what to have, supplies, just different things like that. And of course, you know, if anybody wants to volunteer, we have LAVA, which is Louisiana Volunteers in Action. It's a great resource. It helps out tremendously because it gives us a kind of a bank of volunteers to come in and help us in a shelter or help in a disaster situation. Because these volunteers are not off the street. They are already gone through the credentialing through the state of Louisiana. So they've been credentialed, they've had their background checks and things like that, and they're ready to go. Okay. Is there any questions? Anything I can answer for anybody?
One thing I thought of as you were talking about the difference between a service animal and an emotional or mental support animal. The service animal usually has to perform some sort of job more than just petting. Um, they have to actually perform a task
Mm-hmm.
for the individual. So
Oh, yeah. Trust me, I know. Trust
Yeah.
me, I know. And I had to argue with an 82-year-old gentleman one time because he had a Chihuahua named Rocky that was on a leash that we knew was an emotional support animal,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he tied the leash to his wheelchair and had Rocky pull him and said, "Look, he's performing a service." So you know what? I just kind of gave up at that point, Mr. Jamie, and said, "Okay, if Rocky
Totally.
doesn't bark or pee on my
Yeah.
walls or
Yeah.
anything like that, Rocky can stay." Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
but right, they need to perform a service like,
Right.
there's seizure dogs,
Right.
um, service animals for blind, for
The
deaf,
blonde.
for
Yes.
seizures, they have to perform a service. And that paperwork is, if they show us the paperwork, then we cannot argue with them,
Right.
okay? But, like I said, the emotional support animals, that's becoming a really big thing now. And
Right.
so it's just, we can't have all of them in the shelter.
Right. Thank. Well, Miss White, I really want to thank you for the service that you're providing to the folks that have to go through your shelter at some point through Region 6. Um, uh, you know, hopefully we'll get through this hurricane season without any major occurrences. But now that we have saltwater intrusion coming up
Mm,
the river, who knows what else is
um,
planned for us for the rest of the year.
oh,
Um,
that's it. So thank
uh,
you.
Anybody have any questions for Miss White? I'm looking in the chat box and everyone's thanking you for the presentation. No one has a question yet. Does anyone have any questions? If you're in Region 1, do you have any questions about saltwater intrusion?
Jamie, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the presentation, but one of the things we were interested in are any community resources for some of our patients to be able to obtain water. Is there, because a lot of the stores around here now are out of
Right,
water,
right.
and I'm just
I think
wondering.
you're going to, my understanding is that you're going to see an increase in water supplies. Remember, there's lots of water out there. It's just that the 4 parishes are going to have this shortage, not shortage, but they're going to be impacted by this, and they're the ones that are going to need the water. I know the governor and the mayors and the emergency managers have all been meeting with a lot of the stores, and getting them to increase the amount of water they're bringing in because of what we're going to be facing. So it's not a water shortage per se. And the expectation is that most people are going to purchase their own water. My understanding is that there will be distribution points in every parish, in the 4 parishes that we're talking about, as the water is no longer drinkable or usable. There will be anywhere from 3 to 6 distribution sites in each parish of West Bank, East Bank, that people can go to, and they will be what I heard yesterday was everyone would be allotted, every household would be allotted 2 cases per day. So they can come back and they can get water as they need it. Now, the question that I think you're asking is, what about patients who can't get to those distribution sites?
Yeah.
That's where we're going to be asking hospices and home health to help out by bringing water that we will get to you. And that's the survey that we're sending out this afternoon. It's first of all to identify how many of those patients you currently have on service that would be considered homebound and unable to get to a distribution site. So we're asking you to identify those numbers in each parish, because remember, Plaquemines is going to hit Plaquemines first, then St. Bernard, then the the West Bank of West Bank of Orleans, the West Bank of Jefferson, then the East Bank of Orleans and the East Bank of Jefferson. So there is going to be a process, but we need to know how many folks you're currently seeing that would have to have water delivered to them as opposed to being able to either get to those distribution sites or purchase it themselves. So that's what we need to know so that we can start sending that message to emergency planners and the governor. And then another thing I want to say with regards to this is that you have to you need to track and document any expenses that your agency incurs with regards to the water intrusion issue. Why do I say that? Is because oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, those you will be able to recover that money after the fact. Usually there's a FEMA grant that is given, and if you have documentation of those expenses that you've put out there specifically for water incursion, water intrusion, saltwater intrusion, it may be possible after the fact to get that reimbursed to your agency.
Thank you.
Okay. And these plans are still in process, and that's why we need to extract information from you. I have historical data, but we don't have real data. I don't know how many patients you have on service today, and I don't know how many of those patients you are considering to be homebound. So we're relying upon the agencies to help us get that firm number. I mean, I have the records from last year, and I can say this parish had X amount of hospice patients, X amount of home health patients, but it doesn't tell me what the real number is today and how many of those patients. But many of those patients will be able to fend for themselves. They'll be able to go out and either buy water or get water, go to the distribution sites if it comes down to that, and get their own water. We just need to know how many are homebound, how many would need water delivered, and how many folks, if your agency is available to provide that sort of delivery service, and how many folks in your agency would be able to participate in such a program. And then, of course, the last question is, who's going to be the contact person for your agency for coordinating this? Any other questions? Okay. Well, I thank you all for your time today. We will resume our calls and we'll have regular updates on this saltwater intrusion up the Mississippi. You can always now go to our website. I will be posting updates on water intrusion there on the initial page, on the home page of our website. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to call me. You can reach me at jboudreau@lmhpco.org or on my cell at 504-491-6133. Again, that's 504-491-6133. Okay? If there are no other questions, thank you for staying 5 minutes over our allotted time, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Ms. White.